Getting here to America is just traversing through hell. You know what I mean?
What the frick is up, guys? Welcome back to Hardly Qualified with Horace Gold. I have to be super honest. The conversation that I'm showing you today is the type of conversation that I would have had in the past and been like, I need to start a podcast. Like, this is the one. Look, I'm not trying to like build it up too big and have everyone be like, Horace, like, you're literally trash, brother. That is not the expectation. What I'm saying is that I love having nuanced, hard, beautiful conversations. And I'm so grateful to my friend Alex Chung for sitting down with me to have this conversation. I think we can all agree that there's been like a general stereotype that Asian people strive for just like perfection and excellence. And like, I think of Gossip Girl, right? Where like Nelly Yuki is the number one girl in the class and like everyone has to beat Nelly Yuki's math score to like get into Princeton, right? Like that is the trope that we've been fed via media. And so when I hit up my friend Alex to do today's podcast with me, I did use the word perfectionism with him and I used it for maybe the first 3 minutes of the conversation. And then I heard the context and I was like, oh girl, no, this is like ancestral. And from there on, I was just like hooked into this conversation and so grateful for how generous he was to share his story and his ethnic tree. It's a tree, y'all. It is deep in the ground. It's oaky. It's convoluted. It's large. It's a huge tree, as is life, right? Like we are all leaves falling from a tree. Who am I, Jack Kerouac? What's going on here? I feel so grateful to be able to have this conversation, but more importantly, to be able to hold this conversation. Alex was just so generous and so open, and I hope that we can all hold him as he shares his life story with us. Please, please, please enjoy. Mwah. Hello, everybody. This is Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hello, Horace.
Guys, Alex is an amazing actor here in Los Angeles, one of my closest friends, and I'm really stoked and thank you for coming and having this conversation with me, dude.
Dude, this is such a pleasure, man. I'm very excited to be a part of this journey with you.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
when I first saw you do this, I was like, wow, this is perfect for you. Like, this is like exactly what I think that you should be doing. And so it's an honor, man. And when you asked, I felt a lot of gratitude. Like, wow, I thought it was going to happen later in my life, to be honest, you know, and the fact that it happened, like, I think this is your 3rd or 4th episode.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what a tremendous honor. And
it's
like,
super cool. I'm super stoked. And it's amazing to be able to go on this journey with so many of like my closest people. Like it's really, really tight. I wanted to have today's conversation about Asian perfectionism. One of my best friends is Korean and we kind of were the bad kids. We were doing it a little differently, running around, getting fucked up and doing crazy shit. And it was interesting to notice how much of the perfection stereotype and requirement she rejected, but also the parts of it that she still embraced. Even when we were being crazy kids and when we were young adults after high school, we would go out and like get wrecked, get trashed, and she would like come home and like do laundry, like blacked out. And I was like, oh, we're different. Like there's still this like standard
for sure
that was still being met. And as you and I have talked, you know, I know that there's sort of this mountain that you look at of like, how should I be? Who should I be? And I just wanted to give this conversation away to not only any other like Asian American listeners, but just people in general who might be struggling with the impression of perfection. So I want to kind of get right into it. You're Korean.
Yeah.
I say that like it's like a fact. You're Korean.
I certainly am Korean.
Are your parents first generation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. My dad is what we call a 1.5.
Okay.
So what that means is he came here at a very young age. And so he's not necessarily first generation because he speaks English, right? And he was educated here in America and grew up here. You know, like he spent more time in America than he did ever in Korea.
How old was he when he moved here?
He, on his 13th birthday, is when they arrived from South Korea to Colorado. Yeah, and so it's really interesting just to get that perspective, right? Where it's not necessarily like first generation experience, but at the same time, it's every generation has certain roles that every person has to play in order for you to survive.
Can you speak more to that? What do those rules look like?
For example, like everybody has to play a role in order for your survival to happen, right? A lot of first generation immigrants, they don't come to America speaking English. But you're in this world where, okay, I don't speak any of the language, and so I depend on my kid. In order for us to survive, we need this child to speak English and at a very young age be able to help me maneuver this experience.
So much responsibility in that.
And I think it goes back to what you're saying about your friend. It goes beyond perfectionism. It's duty. It's survival. Like my brother-in-law, he at a very young age, he's a true first generation kid, right? Where his parents immigrated from South Korea and gave up their entire life to come here to America. His father and mother speak very to little English. So at 8 years old, his responsibility is, we get a phone call, answer it. What are they saying? What does this letter mean? James, what does this letter mean? Because I can't read it. That's a tremendous amount of responsibility to give an 8-year-old.
Stakes are so high.
And that's why it's beyond, hey, this is my job. It's like, in order for us to survive.
Right. It's life or death.
It's life or death.
Yeah.
If I don't have the answers for this letter, what are we going to do?
Right.
That's a tremendous amount of responsibility.
There's this like term that's going around right now, like parentification. It's not just like, oh, watch your siblings while we go to church, or watch your clean up the dog's like, it's like, hey, our unit depends on you.
Yeah.
To be able to undo that brain wiring.
Completely.
Sounds impossible, because that's the standard that's been there your whole life. That's the norm. That's the structure.
Because it goes beyond yourself.
Right.
Especially in Asian cultures, there is no self. The family dynamic is the most important aspect of our lives, right? Of like the legacy and the duty that you have. For example, for me, what was really difficult for me growing up is I'm the eldest son in my generation. My dad was the eldest son in his generation. That status, that family status has nothing to do with anything other than birth order for me.
Right. And gender.
Exactly. But with that comes a tremendous amount of responsibility that I didn't choose. He didn't choose. But it's so funny. My grandmother would call me Chung. That's like oldest son. I have an older girl cousin, but because I'm a son, that matters, right? Wow. And so that comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility. We're growing up, my parents, my uncles, my aunts, you're the Changson. You're the firstborn. Like everyone's looking at you, And that was a responsibility that I didn't choose, but it was heavy. It was really heavy. And I think I'll speak for myself. It's that duality of, at home, I'm the Changson. I got to remember that like everyone's looking at me, whether it's true or not. It's this responsibility that I carry. And then outside of the home, outside of the family structure, it's like, oof, could take that mask off.
And that's what I was gonna ask you about, is that duality between being raised in seemingly traditional structure, but then also it being here.
Right.
And so what elements of American culture did your family, and not even just your parents, but like your just extended family, like did you guys embrace parts of Americanism?
Completely. I think what's unique about my experience and my family experience, it's incredibly hybrid, right? Where it's like we celebrate Thanksgiving, Christmas, like on the surface, very American. You can see all of it. But at its core, it's so traditional Korean. Right?
I love that.
And it's fighting that duality of like, what do we hold on to? And then what do we embrace?
Right. And I think that that's what's so interesting about this experience, right? Is because like what you're describing is this community focused group preservation in a country that is specifically hyper individual.
Completely.
So it's that juxtaposition. And I can imagine kind of what you're saying of it being like, I have to sort of code switch and be different people depending on who I'm around.
For sure.
And at such a young age, vacillating between cultures. You have this beautiful experience, but I think that it sounds like to me it would be something that I would find beauty in later.
For sure.
Versus in the time I'm like, I just want to hang out with my friends.
I think you nailed it. It's something that I resented for a really, really long time. It was really hard for me to be that person because I was constantly falling short.
No kid wants to be different.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is just like I realize as life has progressed with my family and like how all the other like cousins and my sister, it's like it worked for them in a way that it didn't work for me. I'm such a black sheep in that sense, where it's like, and it's not to say that they followed all the rules or anything like that, but I have this joke where it's like every Korean family has like a laundry list of like 10 things they want their kid to be. Good college, good job, get married, blah, blah, blah. Like I've done none of them. You know what I mean?
You went to college.
I went to college, but I didn't go to the colleges. You know what I mean? Like in Asian culture, there's hierarchy. Ivy League, number one. It's not even the best. It's like, you know what I mean? You could go to Dartmouth or Cornell, right? It's not like the best Ivy League, but it's like the fact that you went to a Ivy League, like that holds merit.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's so funny in Asian cultures, like we wear these brands, you know, like this prestige, like it matters.
I think that is also, from what I've gathered, because I am like Black American slavery all the way through, like I think that that's a huge part of the immigrant experience as well.
For sure.
Of like that duty that you were talking about earlier. It's like, make it worth it that we came here and that we struggled and that we, and like not necessarily for your dad, but like your brother-in-law's family, right?
Yeah.
Like there's also, I could imagine, and I don't want to tell anyone's experience, but I would also imagine there's a supreme amount of ego death to depend on a child
For sure.
for your sustainability.
For sure.
So to be able to humble yourself enough to like ask your kid to show up in this way,
For sure.
that's a huge sacrifice on my end. So like you hold up your end of the bargain as well.
Dude, I'm so glad you touched on this because I think this is such a unique conversation that doesn't really get brought up a lot, right? We see the very surface of like, when you look at Asians, you're like, oh, perfectionism, this, that, and the other. You have to be overachiever. But it's like the story that brought us to America is just the beginning.
Right.
Right? Like, for
Right.
example, I'm so glad I get this opportunity to tell this because I don't really get an opportunity to, because it's such a heavy conversation just to bring up like as friends, right? But my grandmother was born in Sariwon, North Korea, like present day North
shit.
Korea.
Okay.
Like if a couple decisions don't go in the right way,
Yeah.
like I'm not here, bro.
at all. Yeah.
You know, like in an
Wow.
alternate reality, like, you know, there's a version out there where it's like, I wouldn't be here.
Totally.
But beyond even North Korea, it's like when my grandmother was born, Korea was under Japanese occupation. So it's oppression immediately, right? And so my grandma was educated in Japanese.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she was reprimanded for speaking Korean. Any Koreanness was not okay. And it was like, you know, like, let's eliminate this. And it's so crazy. My grandmother, she had dementia. And as she was losing her mind, she started speaking Japanese.
Right.
Like,
that wiring. That's the wiring of it all.
it's something that she learned as a child.
Right.
And like maybe like 80 years later, her brain is still holding on to that trauma. Oppression is a crazy thing.
Totally.
You know, and it was really eye-opening when I experienced that with her, where I was like, wow, this story is so deep. It's
Exactly.
so long.
Exactly.
You know, and then going from Japanese occupation to Korean War. So they're in North Korea, you know, and then I think the story goes there, it's like they could tell something was up. Like, we got to get out of here or else we're going to be in big trouble.
And I think that anecdote about like your grandmother learning and I guess reverting back to Japanese, right? That speaks kind of to the point I was making about these structures and these systems of how I'm supposed to show up as a child. The Changson is what?
Changson.
All right,
Dude,
Changson.
You're Korean, bro. I can tell.
But like that structure,
Yeah.
you know, is as deep in as your grandmother speaking Japanese.
Yeah, for sure.
So like that is so interesting. I think when we're talking about potentially stepping out of that structure, I speak about this a lot when I talk about leaving the church. Like when I left the church, I was like, yeah, like I'm gay, blah, 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 all this stuff. But I'm like, I still was raised there.
Yeah.
That's still a part of me.
Yeah.
It will, and I'll always miss and know and have some sort of reverence for that part of me.
For sure. Growing up in SoCal, in the San Gabriel Valley, it's like, I look back at that time as it was such a great growing up experience. Like the exposure to so many different cultures. I think that's the one thing that I'm really super grateful for is, man, I never felt like I was a minority. And that's a really beautiful thing to say in America.
Totally.
As a minority.
Totally.
Right? Of just like, oh man, this experience, I was able to just meet people from all over the world, you know, and have friends from all different parts of the world, you know, just because we lived in this incredibly diverse place.
Right.
It was interesting because the white people were the minorities. Dude, I want to say this. There is nothing better than a SoCal white minority person.
They know everything.
They know everything.
They know every culture.
They know how to act around us.
Yeah.
You could bring them to the house and they take their shoes off right away. But it's so beautiful. right? And I think that that was something that was like really awesome for me growing up, where I never had to experience any sort of like hate for myself because I was different. That really happened when I went to college, out of state, out of California, where I was like, oh, I get it.
And I definitely want to get into that. Before we get there, I want to know, like, when did you first realize that there were somewhat different expectations on you versus your peers?
Oh man, that's I think that happened really at a young age. My dad, is a very unique guy, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we were raised, and my grandpa being a very gnarly human being as well, and just expectations. It's funny how life is so just. My dad, I felt like up until I was a senior in high school, like his life was like on an upward trajectory. It's so funny because that's the time where I resented him the most. Man, okay, great, you're successful, but like I don't want to be anything like you. What I'm realizing now in hindsight is he was raised by my grandfather who like didn't have parents. Like, how can we expect this person to know how to parent when like, yeah, he was born under oppression, Korean War, like everything was against him. He comes to America, he's working 3 jobs. Right, it's like asking that person to be a present father. I'm a firm believer that like trauma is passed generationally. And I think it's our responsibility to understand our past and the narratives that brought us here, and really the data, right? And for us to not transfer our traumas down to our children.
And I heard someone say, write a letter from your parents' perspective. And write your parents' life story from their perspective and see if your opinion on them changes.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck you, bitch. Why would you say such a thing to me? Like, God, I get it. Of course.
Of course.
If I'd grown up with these circumstances, same thing for you, like understanding where it goes above me, for sure. Trying to put myself in my dad's shoes.
For sure.
How would I respond?
When I think about my grandfather, it's how could you be so hard on your kids? How could you, like, even to your dying on your deathbed, it's like there's still so much resentment and so much pain that you can't just let go of, but then I put myself in his shoes where it's like, of course, nobody ever taught you love. Everything about your life was about survival, about just like, okay, cool. How do we get from one crazy circumstance to another?
Right.
And then how that even trickles down to me, right? Where it's like getting here to America is just traversing through hell. You know what I mean? It's just like you land here and it's like you think it's over and it's like, no, it's just the beginning of like
literally right now.
Getting yourself out of the gutter.
Right.
And then a generation happens, and then our generation, it's time for these seeds to sprout. Right? It's like, it's your opportunity to be a lawyer, a doctor, a this, that, and the other. It's like all of this
was for
you, so that you could live comfortably.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
So we escape through all of this crazy nonsense, right? So that you.
And the pressure. And that's my next question was really literally going to be right about that. Because again, I think it's informed by the duality of Americanism, 1.5 dad. Like, it's the lines are sort of more blurred for you specifically.
For sure.
So I want to know, like, how did you respond to that? I really love the word duty, by the way. I think it's such a good word for this. How did you respond to that?
It's a really good question, Horace. And it strikes me deeply because not well, but the thing is in the beginning, I always complied, I always did my best for so long to uphold myself to that duty, that responsibility that I had.
What's the timeline we're looking at here?
I mean, from birth, really, to like until I was 30, like I always did it my way, thankfully. And I think it's because I had good parents. They understood this one. He's not like the others. Like if we try to mold him into what we want him to be, he's going to lose his mind. So there was always a little bit of a wiggle room where I could color outside the lines, but it's like, you better produce. Right. So it's like my accomplishments were different than my cousins and my sisters. My sister's like ASB president, valedictorian, this, that, and the other, For me, it's like, what are your accomplishments? Because you're not going to just skate by, right? We're still a Korean household. Like you better give us something so that we could tell our friends.
Right.
My son did this, And so it's like my accomplishment was like sports. So it's like, if I play sports, I got to be the captain. I have to, so that I could tell my parents, right? Homecoming king. It's like, I have to win that so that they could be like, oh, damn, this is like, at least he's doing these things. At least socially we can say, okay, he's doing this, that, and the other, you know? But at the same time, like, it's all about these outcomes. You know, and thankfully for me, it's like with a lot of like pushback, I always did what I thought I was supposed to do in their eyes. Yeah, I mean, I didn't go to Cal or UCLA or SC, but you know, I graduated in 4 years because I knew that was expected of me, you know, and then I got a job in tech, you know, immediately because it's like I needed to, you know, and what's crazy is like the redemptiveness of like my father's experience of like being a very like hard and results outcome oriented, like let's make money. I'm an entrepreneur. To go from that to like becoming a father was my dad. He started a business at the turn of the recession in 2008 and we lost everything. And that was like the big like, oh shoot, this is real. All your spoiled, like your experience, it's like that's gone now. Life is so real. You need a job. And like your duty, it's not a game anymore. This is not an idea anymore. It's up to you to provide. It's like once that happened, seatbelt on, it's like, let's go. It's time. Changson, step up, truly.
Yeah.
So, you know, I went the tech route and I thought that if I made money and if I could do X, Y, and Z, it's like, that'll be enough, you know?
Do you think you were trying to prove that to your parents or to yourself?
Both. That is, both. I think I desperately wanted to be that person, that I could convince myself that I could be the Changson of everyone's dreams. Right? Yeah. Of like, I could be the one. But it's really sent me down a really dark path because at the end of the day, at my core, like I couldn't do it on their terms. I could never do anything on their terms, even now. But what I realized is there is a way for me to live into that. It just has to be for me. It has to make sense for me. It's still a journey, you know, and it's far from over. But at the same time, my relationship to being Changson is so different now. You know, there was this point, I had just turned 30 years old. I was working at a pretty good tech company. And there was this moment where I realized there's not enough nice things in the world that's going to fill this void in my heart.
Real shit.
Right? Of just like my places keep getting nicer. The things I have keep getting nicer. Yet I feel more and more empty. And there was this moment where I really thought about, well, I was working with a therapist and she was like, if God could grant you anything, Alex, in this next chapter of your life, like clearly this isn't working. If God can grant you anything, like what's the thing that you would want to do with your life? What is your dream? And I was really floored with that question because it was the first time I gave myself permission to ask myself that. It didn't matter about what my responsibility or what my duty was. It wasn't going to work for me anymore, you know? And that's when I said to my therapist, I was like, I want to be an actor. And even she was like, whoa, that's too crazy of a jump. Don't do that, you know? And I was like, no, that's my honest truth, you know? And it makes me think about my grandparents and all the sacrifices that they made, you know? And we talked about like, this is the dream, right? Like you get to live that dream. When I finally took ownership of it, it was like, oh yeah, I want to act. And I want all of the decisions that everybody made to come to this moment where I can dream. You know what I mean? And it's beyond like anything other than the fact that like, I am so blessed just even to hear these stories. And instead of it being like a burden now, it's like this source of strength where it's like all these miraculous miracles had to happen in order for me to live my dream.
Barack Obama's big book when he first came was The Audacity to Hope, I think. Or
yeah.
And like what you're talking about right now is like the audacity to dream.
Right.
That is what your grandparents and what everyone emigrated for, was to have that like experience of the American dream.
Right.
Your American dream just looks a little differently than theirs.
Right.
You know, but like at its core, their sacrifice did come true. Right? Because like you are the manifestation of that. I think sometimes when we operate within these structures that feel very linear and one-dimensional and like Cal, UCLA, USC, doctor, lawyer, that's it. Yeah. If you are not that, then you did not do it, right? But like if we actually individualize what the results are, then you're fucking killing it.
Yeah, but at the same time, in saying that too, it's like I had to go through the journey of wandering in that desert, of doing it their way. You know, I think out of college, if I had just jumped into this, like, I don't know if I'm still here. I don't even know where I'm at. And I don't know if I'm able to have this conversation with you to really just internalize the sacrifice.
Right.
You know,
And to give it a fair shot.
and to really give it a fair shot.
Right.
You know, and sometimes it is something that, like, it's a balancing act, because I do feel the weight of the world on my shoulders when it comes to going for this dream. A note that I get all the time is like, man, you really want it bad.
You're a great actor.
And thank you.
You are a
No,
great
thank you. But like, I get that a lot where people are like, whoa, dude, like, care less a little bit. But at the same time, what I think about is that exact scenario, that exact example that you just gave is just like, this is bigger than me. This traces back to North Korea, to these people, right? Where it's like, man, I'm trying to separate myself from outcomes, because this is the dream. This letting go of generational trauma is the dream, because I'm not my father. I'm not my grandfather, you know, and if I am so lucky to even inspire anybody to just let go and just to accept who they are, you know, it's worth it. And why I was so excited to do this with you is this opportunity to just allow myself to let go and to embrace the person that I am through these people who came before me. You know what I mean? And these stories that get passed down, you know, and at first it always felt so heavy because, man, it was life or death. But my life isn't life or death right now.
It's a double-edged sword, though. I do think it can be really galvanizing and exciting to be like, I have generations of immigration and sacrifice, and we escaped North Korea so I could audition for this commercial. Like, that is a lot of pressure to put on art.
Totally.
And it is interesting because I think I notice a lot how few Asian Americans there are in the industry. Obviously, there's politics and bigotry and biases that go into that. But I also, for a long time, it felt like there was just a shortage.
For sure.
It felt like there just weren't a lot of Asian artists.
For sure.
Because I was like, yeah, Brenda Song, great. Jamie Chung, great.
Yeah.
Where are the men? To think back around like the duty aspect and how it's, because it's not about yourself.
For sure.
And so I noticed this sort of shift that's happening now in a way that I really love to see diversity, but not only diversity amongst like numbers, but like which specific ethnicities are showing up. Generational curses are starting to lift, and that can look different. Right? That it doesn't have to be the Cal, the USC, the UCLA. It can be the Tonys, the Emmys, it can be that. And it can hold just as much value, and it can be just as much of a appreciation for your ancestors.
Yeah.
I think if they had known what it would look like, they would be like, of course I want you to do this. It was beyond their wildest dreams. They couldn't even imagine it.
And doctor, lawyer, whatever is what they could imagine.
Right.
Is the thing that makes sense to them in their mind.
Because from my end, if I'm an immigrant, I'm like, girl, we're coming here for some safety.
Right.
I'm coming here for some fucking structure, bitch.
Right.
I do not want to hear that you got in a veil. Right. Is that putting food on the table? I want a 6-figure income. I want to know that I fled so that you would be safe.
Exactly. So that you can live a comfortable life.
Right.
So you don't have to work 3 jobs.
Right.
Right? Where it's like you could be at home with a family and live. You know, I think what's really beautiful is the fact that like there's a Steven Yeun, you know, and there are all these actors now that are getting the recognition, you know, and being able to like portray leading men. You know, growing up as an Asian American, like there was no leading man to like aspire to be, you know, and like even when I was deciding to become an actor, I watched Minari. Minari is like the most accurate depiction that shows what it's like to grow up as a Korean American. And Steven Yeun is the lead. He was actually nominated for an Academy Award.
Oh, wow.
And when I saw that movie, it was the first time where I thought, oh, they see us. They really see us. Not in like a fake way.
Was it written and directed by
Lee Isaac Chung,
Okay,
a
cool,
Korean.
cool.
Yeah, but it's like they really see us. You know, and not in the way where it's like they're shoving it down our throats. You know, like even the auntie just like telling the same story over and over again at the cookout is like, that's enough for us to know where we are. You know what I mean? And watching that movie, I was like, oh, they finally see us, the real us. I was so fortunate to work on Beef. And like watching Steven Yeun like do his thing and be a lead and and just recognize like you are him.
Love that. However, more. It shouldn't be just one.
Yeah, for sure. And now it's not, you know? But it's so funny. I want to talk about this because it's really important. Manny Jacinto, he's a Filipino-American actor. He was on Top Gun.
Good Place.
Yeah, Good Place. Yeah. Like he's like the new Star Wars
Did he get cut out of a scene in Top Gun?
He got completely cut out of the movie.
Like he had like 12 lines in the scene or something like that, right?
And completely cut out. But his big thing was Tom Cruise is not making movies for Manny Jacinto.
Right.
Tom Cruise is making movies for Tom Cruise,
right.
you know? And I think that right now, if you're an AAPI writer, if you have a voice and you have ideas, like I want to encourage you to keep going. It is so important beyond even finding actors. It's like people that can accurately depict what it really means to tell Asian American stories.
And I'll say from my perspective, there have been so many parts of your story thus far on this podcast that I've related to.
Yeah.
As a non-Asian, non-immigrant, I relate to the duty and the rejection of duty as well. So I think that these stories are so human and so universal. And this leads me into my next question, because I feel like when I was younger, a lot of the media I saw that related to Asian men was really like emasculating.
For sure.
And very obviously racist. Like I think of the Rush Hour 2 scene where they like do, and it's like everyone has small dicks. And I'm like, girl, I've been with an Asian man. That is, you sort of defy a lot of the like typical cliches. If you're not watching this, by the way, Alex is this like 6 foot chiseled jaw, like Korean Adonis is what we're looking at here. We hang out and he'll come in workout clothes and he's jacked. Like, was that projected onto you despite it not being your reality? Or do you think you sort of had a different experience around that emasculation?
Yeah, I think that I did everything I possibly could to reject that, right? Like it just wasn't enough for me. Or it was just something that like I really felt. And I think I went out of my way sometimes to project a different type of image.
What did that image look like?
Well, someone that wasn't like your typical math nerd, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. You can, you know, and it's something that I look back on a lot and feel as though it's like, I think what it did was I tried to separate myself from that for a long time. Because as a kid growing up, I just so desperately wanted to like be cool and fit in, if I'm being honest.
Of course, we all do.
We all do, you know? And the thing is just like, man, I think I really rejected that because I didn't want people to look at me and say, oh, you're X, Y, and Z. I did everything I could to prove to people like, no, I'm not like that at all, you know? But I think that there's a part of me that now looking back, I wish I was more accepting of like my Koreanness growing up, you know? Because it's something that I'm so proud of now, you know? And it's something that like, you know, but I had to go through that experience. Like for me, it really happened in college. I would go into classrooms and be the only non-white person in a class of 50. And for the first time experience that feeling of like, whoa, I'm different, you know? And then like hanging out in certain circles being like, oh, I'm overlooked. Like you don't know anything about me and you have X, Y, and Z. You feel some type of way about who I am and you don't even know me.
I hear this a lot from other people, especially regarding the like model minority myth. Like, did you ever feel that in the inverse as well? Like, did people ever overestimate?
Yes. But at the same time, like I did whatever I could to just be like, wait, no, I'm none of those things. Look at me. I'm different, right? Like this terminal uniqueness of just like, hey, I don't want your expectations or I don't want you to feel any type of way. Like get to know me, you know? And you know, the thing that's really difficult about that is as human beings, we're like this amalgamation of like so much. How can you say that all of us are bad drivers or all good at math? Like I was horrible at math. If I could just pass the math class, I would have went to a better college for sure, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like if I could just pass the math class, I wouldn't have gone to, you know, the school that I went to. But at the same time, you know, like it is one of those things where, especially when it came to like being outside of California, it's not, I don't want to say it's ignorance. People just don't know what they don't know because they have no exposure to people like us.
That's ignorance, baby. That's the definition of the word. Have diverse friends, guys. That is my number one takeaway. Have fucking diverse friends. I related to that a lot. And I think there were times in my youth where I would undersell my own majesty.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be so normal that I would rather sell myself short so that I wouldn't take up too much attention.
Yeah.
And so that I would, when I was a kid, I would like try to sing poorly in front of other kids because I didn't want them to be like, sing, sing, sing. I just wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, and I would sort of do this thing where I would go out and I would dance, and I would like dance poorly around like white people so I wouldn't like take too much attention. And now as I step into these things where I'm like, this is my essence.
Yeah.
This is who I am. I'm a performer. I'm gifted. That's who I am. It's in my culture of rhythm and blues and movement. Like there's majesty that is deeper than me. Like this is how my direct lineage used to like wager through oppression, was through song and dance. So how dare I undersell the tactics that allowed my people to survive?
Totally.
Right? So like I'm no longer selling myself short to make others around me more comfortable.
Totally.
I just am like, you can hang
Yeah.
and I can bring you into my light, but I will not dim my light so that you don't feel blinded. You can step into it or you can walk somewhere else. But like my light is going to stay as bright as it needs to be because we've gone through too much as people of color, as marginalized communities. I'm not dimming my shit for you because we're at Tenants of the Trees and you're uncomfortable that I'm dancing to Missy Elliott, bitch. That's on you. Get over it.
But I think what's beautiful about that is it wasn't always that way.
No.
You have to go through this experience of like evolution to really understand what makes you you and the stories and the generations that came before you, you know. And I love that word that you said is majesty. Is there is this like beauty and this like cloak of just wonder that you can put on that goes beyond this present moment. You know, it's all the miracles that had to happen in order for you to get here,
100%.
You know? And the reality is like, yeah, oppression, slavery. It's like these things, they're not, I don't think at this point of where we are in our lives, meant to cripple us anymore.
No. They're meant to inform and for us to revere. But for me, I take it in pride.
Yeah.
I go, I am that slave's wildest dreams.
Yeah, dude. And I think there's such beauty in that statement of taking something that's so ugly and using that for beauty.
Right. Because what else can I really do with it, to be honest? This leads me to my next question of like, what elements of your upbringing do you reject? What do you think could be and should be different?
Man, that's a really tough question to answer because, well, to be honest, I think it's happening right now. You know, I look at the generation below me and it's so different growing up. Like, it's cool to be Asian right now. And I can't believe it.
Fucking K-pop is like
K-pop, you know, Korean dramas,
Yeah.
and like it's just completely flipped on its head. For example, I used to work at a dating app company, and like the two least successful demographics of people is Asian men, Black women. You know what I mean? And it's so crazy because like in 5 years' time, it's like not like that anymore. And we're just at the precipice of it, I feel, you know, where, you know, it is completely different. So, you know, in saying that, like so much is changing. I think if anything, what needs to change isn't as important as just to accept. Right? I think a lot of the generations that came before us, or even me, it's like this rejection of Asianness or like our differentness. Don't speak, like, you know, I see this a lot with like older generation Latinos where it's like they don't speak Spanish because in order for you to survive here, it's like you can't speak Spanish.
Right.
And I think it's important for us to accept who we are, our experiences, and the things that make us us. You know, beyond changing anything, I think it's finding that Venn diagram of like living in America, but holding on to who you are and your heritage, you know, and finding those blends, you know. And I think that's what makes America so beautiful is it's such an honor to like be so different from you, yet find such common ground and be able to like share stories, you know, and be able to like see how we can now moving forward, especially being this vulnerable with each other of like, I really see you.
Yeah.
I really understand who you are, you know. And I think that it's in telling these types of stories and these opportunities to be this candid about who we are, there's such beauty in like moving forward and like this grace and compassion and understanding, because we couldn't be any more different. But at the same time in this conversation, it's like we couldn't be any more similar.
Totally.
It goes beyond like changing. It's like even like outside of like being Asian, but like just like living in this world, find these areas of common ground. I think more than anything right now, what people are searching for is purpose, you know, because everything is so divisive. I have this like funny fantasy where it's like, man, I wish like zombies would come or something.
Bitch,
like, I'm ready for it.
What's funny about that?
I'm so ready for it because then it would not be us versus like it wouldn't be like, it would be us versus them.
The great equalizer apocalypse.
Right. Right? Whereas just like, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, whatever, Asian.
It matters, do you have a beating heart or not?
Right.
That's kind of beautiful. Like The Walking Dead was a very diverse cast.
And I think that's what's so unique about that show. When the zombies come, it doesn't matter if you're smart, this, that, and the other, if you're Asian. It's like, no, we're all trying to survive.
Totally.
And you're able to transcend.
Damn.
And plus, there's only 9 of us left. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or Chinese. Like, you know, we're here to survive.
Might have to start watching The Walking Dead again.
And I think that's the beauty of it, you know? For example, this is like a funny anecdote, but it's like so real. The first Asian American man to have sex with a white woman on TV was Steven Yeun on that show.
We gotta get another famous Asian man besides Stevie. Like not no shade against him.
Right.
I'm talking about how deprived of that representation
For sure.
Asian men are. And like, frankly, it was so funny watching Quiz Lady on Hulu. Because I was like, I know Asian people. She is Chinese and she is Korean. Why are we saying that they're sisters? And it's just this idea of like, middle America doesn't know the difference.
Sure.
And frankly, who's a bigger Asian actor right now besides Sandra Oh and Awkwafina?
Right.
And it's like, there shouldn't just be 2. And so I see these hallmarks of progression.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I want more. I want to see the Asian kids I grew up with.
Right.
They were the ones like packing the bong and like we were partying. So I'm like, show me also real people.
Yeah.
Kind of what you were saying earlier about like not feeling spoon fed. You know,
Right.
I think that there are just so many beautiful aspects of diverse experience. Like everyone loved Everything Everywhere All at Once.
For sure.
Because it was so like I wept over my mommy issues.
Right.
Not my Asian mommy issues.
Yeah.
I watched my story.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of filmmaking
Right.
and storytelling is, I mean, it's under the guise of this Asian American experience, but it doesn't make the core of the story any different.
No.
You know, and I think that's the thing that I'm most excited for in the future is, man, how do we now continue to tell stories without losing that integrity of like, this is an Asian American story or, you know, like whatever the case may be. There's something really interesting going on right now with like, I think purpose, you know, I think we're all looking for something to rally behind and like feel a part of, you know, and I think that's why it's so divisive right now, right? Is we all want the same thing. It's just how we're going about it is just so backwards.
100%.
You know, and that's why I bring the zombies thing up. Is it's for a moment we need to forget the fact that like we're different.
The Olympics were kind of the zombies for a second.
For a second.
And then the election started and we're like, fuck.
Exactly. I think we're at a really unique place right now where like change and what that means and how that manifests in our day to day is like, we'll see.
I love that.
You know?
I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Do you want kids?
Oof, man, you're really asking the tough ones.
There's a follow-up depending on the answer to that one.
I do. At my core, I do want kids.
What messages from your childhood do you think you will give them? And then what will you keep them away from?
Man, yeah, it's a really good question. I think the thing that I would tell my child and really just tell my 7-year-old self is you are loved, you are safe, that you don't have to be anybody. I think that's the one thing that I really struggled with for a long time. And it's still something that I struggle with to this day is this idea that I have to achieve something in order for me to be loved, you know, that I have to like be this person.
You're gonna make me cry, boy.
Because that's, and that's the thing is like, the reality is I am loved regardless of that. And I live a really beautiful life right now, regardless of that, you know, and that there's no amount of like things that I can achieve that that's going to make me more loved, especially by the people that truly do love me, you know, and I'm really grateful right now because like even this, you and I being able to like share this together, it feels special. It feels very like this only happened because we deeply love each other, you know, like what more right now do we need than this present moment?
I have tears in my eyes. It's can feel so transactional. And I just look forward to the kids being able to be kids.
Yeah.
Because that pressure's so intense.
Yeah.
And there's so much, it's such a big mountain for a child. to climb up to. And you've done it so well and you continue to do it. But what you just said about like, there's no action to earn that love, that is healing generational curses.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Alex.
No, this is a blast, man. I that was like a therapy session in itself.
God.
Thank you.
I'm crying, bitch. Why you got me tearing up over here? Alex, where can the people find you on the internet?
Man, I guess Instagram.
Yeah.
This is the part that I was like, man, I don't really have anything to plug, to be honest.
Yourself, that face.
Yeah. But I've been wanting to say this, especially on this podcast.
I'm nervous now.
Yeah. I know this is like episode 4, but there will be a time where this becomes episode 100 and I will be back. And when I do come back, I'll have a movie to promote.
Oh, fucking yeah, you will.
And our reality will be so different. And we're both powerful creators. I just want to breathe life into this show a little bit of just keep going, because whatever this is, there's majesty behind it, brother. There's so much majesty. And I'm just so glad that if this is just a part of your journey, that I get to be a part of it. And so come show 100, it's like our reality is going to be so different. But I just want you to keep going and keep showing up and keep being honest, because Horace, you are an incredibly beautiful, wonderful person. Oh, thanks. And I'm just so grateful, because you said this in a message today where it's just like, thanks for going on this journey with me. It's like, dude, this is about to be so different. You just keep going and you keep telling these stories and you keep showing up for people that need a voice, because it's your responsibility, And so I just wanted to encourage you and breathe life into whatever this endeavor is. It's just like, it's scary to start something new. Yeah. It's embarrassing and it's this, that, and the other. But man, I couldn't be more excited. And I will be back.
Hell yeah, you will.
I will be back.
Oh my God. I love you so much.
I love you so
dude.
much, brother. Like, for real. Thanks for allowing me to be here. And like, thanks for giving me an opportunity to tell my story.
Anytime.
Yeah, this was really beautiful,
I'll see you on episode 100. Love you, dude.
Love you.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you next Sunday, next Wednesday. Mwah. I need to go wipe my tears. I'm crying.